The first speaker is Dr. Appolinaire Djikeng. He's going to speak to us about the BecA Empire. Appolinaire.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Eric, for giving me the opportunity to share some of our thoughts at this conference. I want to thank Rajiv and the team for inviting us. And I should acknowledge that the BecA-ILRI Hub is represented by two people, myself here and my colleague Nasser Yao. So I was given the opportunity to propose a talk, which is the BecA-ILRI Hub and its contribution to African agriculture, biotechnology, and crop improvement. But this is really the running title of the program that we are running here, which is really looking at how we can mobilize the biosciences for Africa's development. And I should say that in terms of introduction, we still see the globe, the challenges as really interconnected. So as you will see, and you've heard from previous presentations, you cannot solve one issue as a standalone thing, and this is really the foundation for the program that we are actually looking at. You're very familiar with these global challenges, and you know how partnership is a critical component in terms of tackling them. So this is just to refresh our memories. If you look at the divide in terms of access to food, access to quality food, you see that unfortunately some parts of the world are still lagging behind. What can we do about it? And this is related to some of the thoughts that Rajiv shared this morning on how we can feed the world by 2050. So he also mentioned that each one of us is doing his little piece, and really how can we work together to address this challenge and make sure that we have a sustainable set of solutions. Again, thanking Tony Simons of ICRAF. This is one of the ways of looking at this divide. And you see here, in advanced, in industrialized or rich countries, this is what people have access to for maybe a week. And next to them, you have what people will have to rely on for the same length of time. How can we close this gap? And one important point I want to make on this slide is that we all talk about smallholder farmers. These are the smallholder farmers that we are talking about. How can we empower them? And also I want to say that when we talk about smallholder farmers that are poor and stuff like that, we're actually looking at failed businesses. How can we make sure that they see farming as an opportunity for them to generate income and then have access to other resources to have healthy and productive lives. So coming from Africa, I didn't want to miss again the opportunity to share some of the key characteristics of African agriculture. One of them is that if you're able to use agriculture to increase your GDP, the likelihood of transforming lives 2 or 3 times more compared to other sectors is there. So really, if we're talking about alleviating poverty, agriculture and or agricultural development is a key component. And the last point here is that prosperity is in Africa will have to rely a lot on how we are able to improve agriculture. And once again, looking at smallholder farmers because they represent more than 70% of the total population. So inclusive growth is very important. And this is really what I want to talk about in terms of African perspective. If you look at many sectors, you know, it could be extractive industries. You can promote economic growth, but how many people are you able to affect? And really, agriculture is most likely going to provide the opportunity for us to talk about inclusive growth, or in other words, targeting and dragging a significant number of people out of poverty. So the picture is not that dark. There are several opportunities in Africa, natural resources that are really plentiful, and then the part of the land that can actually be used for farming. I think we can harness these opportunities to actually do things that are transformational. And the second thing also is that from Africa, there is a commitment through what we call the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, which is targeting at least 60% growth. It's not common occurrence in many countries, but we do hope that in years to come, this will become something that we can measure. And if we're able to measure this and promote it, it would be extremely important for us to see how agriculture is actually transforming the lives. So strategies for transforming agriculture, there are many things that can be done, but really productivity is one of the things. And I don't want to just say productivity is the only thing. You have to produce, you have to be able to transform it, you have to reduce post-harvest losses. You also have to link what you're producing to the markets, but this is really not the main point for this talk here. So the program that I'm very fortunate to be leading is looking at how we can really harness the biosciences for agricultural productivity. So we started in the early 2000s, and I want to acknowledge many of the key partners here, the CG system, ILRI, New Partnership for Africa's Development, and the Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture. They really came together to push for a center that should be in Africa and really harnessing the biosciences. We have gone through what we call the establishment phase, the implementation phase, with many more supporters, governments, foundations, and donors, including people, really making sure that we have a center where we can actually go to do some of those things related to transforming agriculture. And we are now operating under our business plan from 2013 to 2018. So what are we trying to do? What are we focusing on? There's been a lot of research in Africa from the CG perspective. Many of you here have very good memories of what the CG has done many, many years. A lot of the work have been done in Africa. And in any sector, you can look at agriculture, public health, and all that. A lot has been done. Are we really connecting it to the issues? Are we really looking at the smallholder farmers as where all our innovation should actually have impact? So we are really in this program making sure that we establish functional links between what's happening in the lab and in fact responding to the challenges that we see that exist in the field. And I should say here that when I talk about agriculture, I'm looking at both crops and livestock here. So what do we do here? Building strategic partnerships here. And at this point here, I want to really acknowledge many of the people who started before me, making sure that you can put in place very good partnerships, each partner bringing its own piece to make sure that we in the lab are responding to needs expressed from smallholder farmers in the field. And I want to say that with the group from Nairobi, not just Nasser and myself, we have Morag Ferguson representing IITA, ICRISAT also based in Nairobi. We've been working in partnership, SIP, also CIMIT, and really creating a community to help us drive and connect the two parts. So our program is really focusing on what is outlined here. We have the capacity building, which is really the main thing. And many of you know that when we talk about capacity building, it's really not just training one individual and saying, okay, you have your master, you have your PhD, but it's really looking at somebody who is going to receive that degree and become a successful scientist, run sustainable program, even within national programs in Africa where we have several challenges. So we have established and designed innovative ways on addressing capacity building. When we are talking about research for development, we have nutrition and food safety, livestock productivity, crop improvement, which is really what's important for us here. Some work around climate change and the utilized crops and animal species. And we also try to address the issues that I outlined in the earlier part of my talk through the establishment of platforms to help us drive research and capacity building. I wouldn't have the time to go through this, but I crafted this presentation to have many slides so that for those who are interested in having access to this, you can have a copy at the end of this. As I mentioned, partnership is a key element in us doing this. This is a slide for you to reflect. It's really not describing the situation in Africa, but if you look, this is a publication looking at the rate of training plant scientists in the US. It's really not growing. And if this is the situation in the US, you imagine that in other parts of the world, it would be extremely challenging to have plant scientists. In many African countries, when you look at breeders, there are only very few of them. They are breeders, very good ones, but I don't think we have as many as we would like to have. So this is just one area, but training for training for the new generation of plant scientists is extremely important, and this is one of the things that we really want to play a role in. So our capacity building program was really designed, as I mentioned, to be focusing on supporting individuals and also institutions. We've crafted it and call it the Africa Bioscience Challenge Fund. We have a fellowship program, which is a mechanism helping us to support scientists who will come to the BecA-ILRI Hub, have access to the resources that we have. When I say resources, not just money for operation, but also the many good brains that exist in the community that we have in Nairobi, and also have access to other scientists in advanced research institutions and in other institutions within Africa. We have training workshops. Some of them are customized to make sure that we have specific technologies and concepts integrated in our thinking in the region. And we also focus on institutions, making sure that institutions are well supported. They have access to resources. They can write competitive grants to actually retain their scientists and train the new generation. And the issue of partnership is also very important, as I mentioned. When I talk about the region, when I talk about BecA, I'm not just talking about the people who are actually sitting with us in Nairobi. I'm talking about other scientists sitting in national research institutions and universities, because we were set up to be the extension of those institutions. So these are some of the people that we have trained, and the countries here are highlighted here. This number is a little bit outdated, but this is how we're doing it. I want to highlight the support here from various donors. Actually started with support from Australia to establish the ABCF 4 years ago. Now many other donors have joined, have BMGF here, DFID, the Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture, UNESCO, and many other donors, and Sweden that have joined. So last year we did the review of our capacity building program. One of the things that I want to share with you here is that the stakeholders believe that the BecA-ILRI Hub promotes the development of cutting-edge research into applicable solutions for addressing food security and quality issues in Africa. This is how this program is helping us not just to train people who have degrees, but train people who are actually addressing key issues that are relevant to regional and national challenges. So strategic partnership, you know, the award, the African Women in Agriculture Research for Development. We've set up a partnership with this program to make sure that we can target some of the strong women scientists in Africa who will have access to the resources provided by AWARD, and the same and the resources provided by the BecA through the BecA-ILRI Hub. Each one of these ladies here could give a presentation which will go beyond the time allocation that I have, but I just want to make sure, I just want to share with you the excitement that we have really being behind some of the work that is being done. Root, for instance, has been focusing on UG99. You know how important that disease has been. So in terms of the people that we have really supported, this is Joseph Dunguru from Mikocheni Agricultural Research Institute in Tanzania, one of the first recipients of the ABCF, who is now a recipient of significant funding from the Gates Foundation and also DFID. And you have him in the field here visited by Bill and Melinda. You know, this is really honoring an African scientist who is indeed doing a lot of important work on cassava. So the second person that I really want to talk about is Alex Bombom, pictured here. He managed to successfully cross maize and sorghum, and we've been supporting him to use the molecular tool to characterize the hybrid. And he's gone to F1, F2, and F3. And I was discussing with one of the scientists here from CIMID who have been helping him to really understand what's happening here. And these are some of the breakthroughs that, you know, if we are very smart and innovative, we can put them to use in terms of understanding how you could shuttle some of the genes between crops. So other platforms that we have set up here, genomics, bioinformatics, molecular breeding, nutritional analysis platform, and some of the diagnostic. This is the toolbox. I'm not going to say much about this. Rajiv and the rest, they have shown similar equipment. But what do we do with it? So this is an adaptation of the slide that I used when I was still in academic to demonstrate that you can generate a lot of HCGT soup. You can mix information, put in the database, but really do a lot of the analysis to extract important biological answers to what you're looking for. It could be for breeding, it could be for diagnostic, understanding disease surveillance and stuff like that. But really what I want to share with you is the breeding platform that we're trying to put together. Can we link the powerful of generating sequencing data into really identifying some of the markers and using them to accelerate breeding. So I want to highlight here that we are now working very actively with diversity array technology, and I hope Andres will be here and give a talk from that perspective. There's been a lot of mention of the DART platform. The question now is, how do we use the DART platform to strengthen our genomics platform and sort of accelerate the breeding cycles on the continent? I'm not going to say too much about this, but the last point here is one of the things that we are doing with GCP, the integrated breeding platform. BecA is now the hub for testing some of the tools that have been generated from that program. A lot of interactions with the breeders. We're trying to understand what are the challenges so that we can better formulate a good menu to support them through what the IBP is offering, and more importantly on how we can use this high-density genotyping platform in the region to support breeding. So the people behind this, I mentioned Nasser, who is here with us, and he was here at the conference, and he's very familiar to many of you. Alex, who is also here, and the genomics people, the bioinformatics, and also the IBP technical coordinator. I should say here that if I was to give this talk 2 months or 3 months from now, I would give you a lot more information on how we are doing on the IGSS, the Integrated Genotyping Support and Service that we are setting up, thanks to Gary and the Gates Foundation for that particular support. As I mentioned, this is really bringing the DART technology and also expertise, but really doing GBS, discovering the SNP and seeing how we could use that to support breeding. So the nutritional analysis platform, I touch on this just to create a link between what we are doing and what Howard shared in the morning. So if we're doing a lot of breeding, I think it's very important also to, at any given point, measure the nutritional profile, because some of the crops that are well adapted in the region for which we need to improve actually provide a micronutrient dense opportunity to tackle challenges that we have around nutrition. I'm not going to say much about it here, but I would like to mention that we set this up to measure aflatoxin in maize, and we are moving that to look at other toxin. It could be in groundnuts, and really look at micronutrient in many of the commodities. And we use this to deliver on the partnership with CSIRO, which was really supporting us, looking at food safety and some of the, especially some of the issues around aflatoxin in maize. And I want to acknowledge Peter, who was a key driver for that particular partnership, which has done quite a lot in the region, not only in research, but also in training people who can actually drive their own research programs within their own countries. So in closing, I want to go back to this slide here. And many of us here are from CG centers or are associated with CG centers or have some knowledge about the CG centers. So if I reflect on the type of things that we have been doing at the BecA-ILRI Hub, how can we use this to sort of really contribute to a better CG, especially in the context of the CG reform, which is ongoing? One of the things that we have successfully demonstrated is we have created an environment through which many of the CG centers can work together, and they can also have better engagement with African national programs, taking into account the challenges related to the capacity building, and also working collaboratively to have African scientists drive very important challenges related to their national priorities or sub-regional priorities. So I want to also highlight use this example here to show an engagement between what we are doing and also support from other CG centers, but really engaging national program. This is a program led by a scientist from Hamelmalo Agricultural College in Eritrea, really looking at how you can integrate physiology, linking that to genomic resources to really look at drought tolerance. I'm not going to elaborate much here, but I wanted to use this slide to say that, you know, even using low-tech SSR markers and stuff like that, we've been able to link some of these pieces together and make sure that a scientist with a challenge within a specific country can actually address it and have varieties that are released. The key question here is now, with the powerful technologies, genomics and bioinformatics that we have, how can we then accelerate the cycle for releasing these varieties? The second thing that I want to mention, which is really a slide designed by Yao, is really looking at strengthening Naliendele Agricultural Research Institute in Tanzania. Breeders there having challenges in using the right tools and designing their breeding program to actually accelerate variety release. But on this slide here, we are demonstrating that we could use some of the low throughput markers, but moving forward, we'll have the opportunity to use actually high density genotyping profiling to accelerate the cycle here. And this here is really not just a research proposition, but also it's a proposition of partnership on how we could engage with African national programs, understand the issues that they are facing, create access to a much broader community through the CG centers and access to advanced research institutions, and within a very short term, help them to actually generate or develop varieties that they can use to support smallholder farmers. This is again some numbers that we've generated through our collaboration with the integrated breeding platform. I mentioned that the BMS generated through the through the IBP is now helping us to interact a lot more and have a good understanding of the challenges that national program scientists are having. So what do we do with this information? We take it, we then translate it into some of the things that we can address through our ABCF fellowship or through specific training courses, and more importantly, through some of the support services for which the menu is being expanded currently. So I had this slide here, sorry, I'm going back. So let me end here. I hope I ran through this very quickly to give time for people to ask questions. But as I mentioned, I created these slides, far too many for the short time allocation, just in case I forget something. But I would like to share this presentation with you so that we can have conversations on the many aspects here. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Appolinaire. You spent a little over 20 minutes, but I'll use my prerogative to allow one or two quick questions, please. It's important to all of us, and I think we should allow some time. The poster session, we have already looked at a number of the posters, so please, bear with us. This is Africa's future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appolinaire, thank you very much for the acknowledgement of the Australian BecA great partnership we've had over the last few years. But a serious question, in how close do you think a bioscience hub should connect to end beneficiaries and users as opposed to going through third parties? What's your view on that?
Can you say it again, Peter?
How close do you think the bioscience scientists and a hub like BecA, how close should you connect to end beneficiaries and users as opposed to passing your science on to other parties to do that job?
Thank you, Peter. I may have gone through the partnership very, very rapidly. So it is very important that the bioscientists will continue to focus on what's happening in the lab. then the partnership with other entities that are trusted by smallholder farmers is very important to deliver that. It would be very difficult and quite challenging for a scientist to be looking at, taking a variety to convince farmers to adopt it and stuff like that. So the model of the collaboration or partnership that we have is we work primarily with national program scientists who then have the network of extension services and NGOs and the network that exists in the country for any innovation, new knowledge to actually reach smallholder farmers.
Thanks, Appolinaire. I have a question about when you see linking the farmers, the lab and the farmers, that big circle that you have designed. I don't see any government there. What is African governments are doing?
There are governments there.
Okay.
Let me just answer that way. So we have national research institutions that are operating on behalf of various governments. And we actually also have universities and many other entities in various countries. Yeah.
Let me just ask a quick one. Do you think that your name has limited you moving to other places in Africa? West Africa needs biosciences for West Africa. I don't know when it will come. While waiting for that, how can all of the countries in West Africa access BecA?
So the slide that I showed you, the slide of Africa with some of the countries shaded, I say that it is outdated. So we've actually supported many of the scientists from West Africa. That's one. Secondly, BecA was set up to cover East Africa. There was a similar initiative for West Africa. The West Africa one did not take off. But 4 months ago, we met with IIT and many other stakeholders to redesign how we could tackle West Africa biosciences. So in fact, we are open to supporting West Africa.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause.